Greetings, loves. It is I, Tactical Girlfriend. Welcome to my weird little corner of the even weirder world that we know as GunTube. I hope everybody's doing well. Today, I have a very special guest on the channel, and that guest is actually not a person, but an inanimate object. That object is the Primary Arms Generation 2 SLX 1x MicroPrism. This is a very interesting optic to me. It's just coming out. It's really got some pretty neat features, and it's built on a very strong pedigree that Primary Arms has been forging throughout the years. So without further ado, let's get into it. One note for transparency's sake, I do want to talk about my relationship with Primary Arms. Now, they did send me this optic for free to try out. No other goods or funds were exchanged. I do have an affiliate link with them, but I do want to give you the most honest and brutal review of this as I possibly can. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, the very first thing that I want to highlight about this site is that it is, in fact, a Prism site. Now, Prism is just a certain kind of optical technology. I'm not going to get into the weeds with this one, but it is distinctly different from something like a holographic site or red dot reflex site. This is especially pertinent for people with astigmatism. If you're using something like a red dot, you can experience blooming or distortion of the reticle itself if you do have astigmatism. I actually have astigmatism in both of my eyes, and this usually isn't a big deal for me. Any artifacts like that are usually very minor, but your mileage may greatly vary, and it does for a lot of people. And a prism is a really good option if you don't want your optic to have a weird distorted reticle. So carefully consider that. Now, there are disadvantages, of course, to all of these things. There's always a give and take, and that's why there's options on the market in the first place. You're gonna have issues with eye box and eye relief and all of that when it comes to a prism sight. That may not be a huge issue for you depending on how you're going to configure it on your weapon, but that is just something to consider. They all have their ups and downs. Also, prisms are really robust in general. This sight is absolutely no slouch in that regard. It is a very tough optic, and it's very well built on top of just having very good, robust prism technology. Now, I did mention that this is the second generation of the Primary Arms SLX 1x MicroPrisms that they put out, and it does come with some new improvements. Specifically, this one's a lot smaller than its predecessor, and it's also lighter, weighing under 7 ounces, so it's fairly unobtrusive and easy to use. Beyond that, they also made the reticle on it a bit bigger because previous users complained about the previous generation just being a bit too small to pick up the reticle on, and they just wanted to make it a lot easier and faster to use. And as a CQB reticle, it's great. And beyond that, you can still use it for some good long-range shooting. Moving right along, let's talk about the glass, which is arguably the heart of the entire optic. Now, specifically with field of view, we're looking at 76.5 feet at 100 yards, which is a really generous field of view in my opinion, and it's very easy to use. The optic also has a diopter in the back, which is extremely necessary in my opinion on anything that is like a prism or a scope. That helps you adjust the focus of the reticle and the glass to your eye because everyone's eyes are different. Different focal lengths will require you to adjust that, and it's just generally good to be able to have that freedom to do so. Moving right along, let's talk about the glass quality. Now, for what this optic is, I have to say I'm pretty impressed. There's very little chromatic aberration around the edges, if any. The distortion from the lenses is a little bit detectable. It's very slight, but it really doesn't bother me or interfere with my usage. The light transmission is excellent, and the overall image is very clear and sharp all around. And for what this is, you're going to be very hard-pressed to beat it for the money. Is it a pair of $2,000 Carl Zeiss ground lenses? No, of course not. But for what it is, yeah, good luck finding anything really much better. Now, as far as eye relief goes, it's very generous in my opinion. Technically, I would say it's probably ideally around 2 to 6 inches is kind of the sweet spot, but honestly, I can go from right up against it almost all the way to about there when I start seeing shadows. I mean, that's pretty crazy. That's more than adequate in my opinion, so I don't think it's really a factor. With a lot of prisms, they can be a factor. I don't think this is one of them, so don't worry about it. The eye box is also really, really nice. I think that you can kind of wobble this around quite a bit, and it's not going to really cause many issues here. Now, as far as parallax goes, I did try shooting a target while shifting my eye around the eye box towards the edges, pushing it to its extremes. I noticed that I was still consistently hitting that target throughout, so as far as that goes, I would say parallax is not really an issue with this optic, as much as I would have expected at least, and that's exactly what you want to see. Another neat little feature is that there's threading on the very front of the optic so that you can install an anti-reflective device if you choose to. Also, the optic is fully nitrogen purged so as to cut back on fogging. Next, let's move on to what is perhaps the most exciting part of this optic, and that's the reticle. This one uses the primary arm's Cyclops ACSS reticle. Now, being a prism optic, it uses a reticle that is etched into the glass. It's not projected from an emitter, it's simply a part of the glass, and that is really, really cool. I think that this is oftentimes the way to go as far as reliability goes because you don't need electronics to use it. If you're using a red dot and your battery dies or there's an electronic failure, then you're completely out of luck. This will just keep going in those cases, so that's a really, really neat feature. Now, the ACSS Cyclops reticle itself is a very brilliant design. It utilizes a horseshoe on the outside, which is really, really good for close quarters and shooting anything under 25 yards. It's very, very quick and fast to acquire. Now, in the interior of that, you're gonna have your chevron. Chevron is gonna be for more precise shooting, and it actually includes 3 different bullet drop compensation points. In my case, I'm using the very top tip of the chevron for my 50-yard zero. Underneath it, my first bullet drop compensation point is going to be the 300-yard mark, and the very bottom end of the chevron is going to be my 350-yard mark. Below the main reticle, we also have our ranging reticle, which is really brilliantly designed. It's based on using a 5'10" person as an average benchmark, and then you can compare the ranging reticle to your human-sized target to determine the range of that target based on those dimensions. Also, the width of all those demarcations are based on the average of an 18-inch shoulder width, so you can also use shoulder width to determine that range as well. This is actually a really brilliant, very clean, simple way to find a human-sized target's range. As far as the illumination for the reticle goes, there are 13 different settings that are adjusted by a very stiff rotary knob on the left side of the optic. Now, I'd rather have this be too stiff than not because having this thing go spinny would just really drive me crazy, so just something to note. 3 of those settings on this are also for night vision if you gotta LARP in the most expensive way possible. And yes, I think it gets daylight bright. I don't know why people go crazy about that because I prefer shooting with a black reticle that's not illuminated in the direct sunlight. I find that it's just crisper and easier to pick up, but you do you. This thing does get plenty bright in direct sunlight if that's a concern. As far as power goes, it runs on a CR2032 battery. This thing has 29,000 hours of runtime on a medium setting, which is absolutely bonkers. That battery is going to last you for a very long time. Adding to that, it has a shake awake feature so that if the gun is left still for 2 minutes, it will shut the reticle off on its own, at least the illumination part of it, and that also helps conserve battery power significantly. All you need to do is pick up the gun or move it at all, and that will come right back up online. As far as like home defense roles go, this is a really, really good option for that reason. As far as mounting goes, this thing uses a mini ACOG footprint as opposed to the aim point footprint. This does limit the mounting options that you have available to use for this, but that being said, it does come with its own mount, which is great because it's configurable in 8 different shapes and sizes. There's cantilevers in various heights that you can adjust it to, so whatever you need, you probably are pretty well covered. Also, the mount seems to be pretty solid in my experience. I haven't had any issues with point of impact shift, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm running mine at a 1.97 inch height so that I can use my night vision with it very easily. As far as zeroing goes, it of course uses 2 turrets for windage and elevation. Now, these are fully exposed, there's no caps, because they're very hard to adjust without a specific tool, or coin, or shell casing. Their adjustments are very tactile when you click through, and very audible, so super user-friendly and easy to do on the range. Now, the one downside with this is that it is a 1 MOA per click adjustment. That's not great. I think that most optics generally use half MOA adjustments. I don't know why they chose to do that, so I would say that is a detractor. I'm not stoked about that. It'd be really cool if they do eventually release this with a half MOA adjustment at least. But for anything that's more CQB oriented or short range, that's not a huge deal, but it would be nice to have. As far as construction goes, it's all housed in an aluminum alloy body with hardcoat anodizing. This optic was also tested by Primary Arms on a SCAR 17, shooting 7,000 rounds of 308. That kind of recoil kills a lot of the optics out there, so it's really good to know that it can withstand that kind of abuse. Also, I've ran it through its paces a bit, but I certainly haven't done any sort of rigorous torture testing here. I certainly will let you know if I do experience any issues down the line though. It's also rated at IP67, so it's nice and watertight. This optic also comes with a lifetime warranty, so if anything does happen, it's good to know that Primary Arms does have your back. This puppy currently retails for $249.99, and it will be released with a green illuminator version in addition to the red one that we have here, and an FDE version down the line. Well, that's all the review I got for you. If you want to buy this optic, you can follow my affiliate link in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell too. If you've subscribed in the past, you also may want to check back again because YouTube does this very silly thing where they just randomly unsubscribe people for no apparent reason. I also want to give a huge shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You make this channel possible, and I couldn't do it without you. I don't monetize the channel in any way, I don't run ads on it. Everything that you see here comes from viewers like you. So if you want to go help out, you can always go to patreon.com/tacticalgf. You can see the end of the video for the names of my biggest contributors. And that's all I got for you today. I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please be good to each other out there. And as always, please take care. Bye!